One of the perennial problems in philosophy is the mind body problem. This is the question of whether people have a non physical mind, soul, or spirit. There are two major schools of thought, three if we count Bishop Berkeley and his idealism, but no one ever took Berkeley seriously except possibly the Wachowskis when they were making The Matrix. But the two biggies are materialism and dualism, specifically Cartesian dualism. The materialist posits that humans are a body, we are meat, we are fully material beings, and what we think of as our consciousness is an effect of that material. It is an effect of the physical material of the brain and of chemical and electrical reactions and responses within the brain. The dualist, following Descartes, says that yes, humans are material beings. We have a material brain. There are physical reactions, chemical, electrical, what have you. But beyond that, past that, there is a non physical mind, spirit, or soul. These two sides have been at war for centuries now. And honestly, it's a war that's not likely to ever end. But I argue that one man, one American genius, has the answer. That man is Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania's very own George A. Romero. Romero, who you may know as the writer director of the Dead movies, Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Land of the Dead, and the much less interesting Diary of the Dead and Island of the Dead, took a side in this. Most people don't seem to notice that he's taking a side, but I think that he takes the materialist view. And to explain, for the uninitiated, Romero's movies are about zombies, although he never uses the word zombie in the movie and has actually said that he thought of them more as ghouls, at least when he and Russo were making the first movie, Night of the Living Dead. The premise is that people die, and everyone who dies gets back up. They become mindless, shambling things that feed on human flesh and can only be killed by destroying the brain or removing the head from the body. You hear that a lot, destroy the brain or remove the head from the body. Burning works because it destroys the brain. Now, you might say, this doesn't seem to have anything to do with the mind body problem. Or you could even argue that it comes down on the dualist side because when people die, they come back as unthinking beings, right? And so the dualist could argue at this point that the reason they come back as unthinking beings, even though the brain is still there, even though there's some electrical and chemical responses happening, or else they couldn't move around, is because at the moment of death, the soul, the spirit, has fled the body and gone to whatever afterlife one imagines. But there's a problem with this. We we see it slightly in Night of the Living Dead, where we see a child zombie pick up an implement and use it as a tool to kill her own mother in a scene that is absolutely beautifully shot with a swinging light bulb. Um, just genius filmmaking, but I'm far, far from the point here. Where Romero's thesis really comes into play, a little in Dawn, but mostly in Day of the Dead. In Day of the Dead, we meet a zombie. We meet a named zombie. His name is Bub, and he is a major character. Dr. Frankenstein, as he is called, is experimenting on Bub. He thinks that these zombies could be trained, taught. We could feed them, and in doing so, make them harmless to us. And he's slowly been experimenting with Bub. And what we see is Bub has a certain level of intelligence. He doesn't have the intelligence that you would expect of a 40-year-old man, which is approximately what we guess that Bub is. Um, but he recognizes things. For instance, he sees a telephone and he picks up the receiver, the handset, and holds it to his head in basically the right way and makes noises as if he's attempting to talk into it. He sees a razor and tries to shave his face. He is returning to the world of tools. He is returning to the world of thought. At one point, he almost speaks a line of dialogue. He comes so close. The guttural zombie moans turn almost into words. Unfortunately, we don't get to see the full evolution of Bub because, well, it's a zombie movie and things go to shit. And when that happens, it happens fast, and Bub is exterminated. But Romero does not forget Bub. Another form of Bub shows up in Romero's next of the Dead film, Land of the Dead, which, if you haven't seen it, please do. It is some of the most biting satire ever put on film. It is one of the 10 greatest anti capitalist movies, and it is filled with amazing performances. Dennis Hopper, completely at the top of his game. John Leguizamo being, well, John Leguizamo in such a wonderful way. But again, running down a bit of a rabbit trail there, so ignore that. There is a zombie who we call Big Daddy. We call him Big Daddy because he's wearing work coveralls with a name tag on the chest, and his sewn on name tag says Big Daddy. When we first see him, he is at a gas station and he is attempting to pump gas. We can assume that he was an attendant at the gas station in his old life, in his before being dead life. And he's still following the motions, right? Following the motions. But as the film progresses, we watch as Bub stops following the motions. He recognizes a tool and he picks it up and he uses it. He begins to use weapons. He uses a hammer to break through a brick wall. And not only that, he begins teaching the tool use to other zombies and to leading them, turning them into an army of zombies to attack the human outpost. Now, what's that have to do with any of it, you might say? And I get you. We're running to the far side of reality here. So give me a minute. My argument is that culture, use of tools, use of higher level thinking, tactics, leadership. These are actions of the mind, of an advanced mind, not stimulus response. This is not insect intelligence. This is primate intelligence. And the dualist has to believe that that kind of intelligence, things like culture, are effects of what they believe is non physical, a soul, a spirit, a non physical mind. But we already understand that at death, that thing leaves the body. It ceases to be part of what's left behind. So, for the dualist to fit into this, they would have to argue that the spirit flies away. And then when Big Daddy sees a tool flies back, that makes no sense. what makes more sense is that those zombies are just like us. They're just meat, but meat with culture. Anyway, that's a brief overview of what I want to say about George Romero and the mind body problem. Um, if this was in any way interesting to you, despite the terrible lighting, the complete lack of editing, and the fact that I'm a funny looking weirdo, please think about hitting that subscribe and like button. You can find us on Patreon, This Couch Thing on Patreon, and we have a website, thiscouchthing.com. Come check us out. We're going to say crazy stuff, and have a beautiful night.